to Unhinged Magi,
where we get unhinged.
Yeah, very unhinged. Like,
Yes.
woo!
All right.
So,
what are we talking about today?
we're talking about new people.
New
Like-
people.
Like just born. New.
All right. We're talking about babies.
Yep.
All right.
Bring
Get
them out.
ready.
Spank them.
All right. Bring your kids out. We're going to give them all the information about that.
So, we're talking about new players into the old school format.
Okay.
And that can actually show up from two different vectors. Maybe some people, this is their first foray into Magic, is starting in old school, for which I'm sorry. And maybe the other vector is people that used to play other formats, or maybe they're at least currently playing other formats, and now they're coming from those into Magic. So they know how to play Magic.
Right.
They're just really coming into old school.
Yes. Okay.
So for those people that are new to the old school format, what would be the good decks to target as starting points? Where should they look?
Wait. Hold on. Are they going to be having all the cards available to them, or are they going to be able to not have all the cards?
Let's
available
assume in this case they don't have the cards. And so they're going to have to be buying cards, and they're going to have to be building decks to get into the format.
Okay, so first off, they probably need dual lands.
Yes.
Guaranteed. Or if they're going to go mono. A lot of people,
That's exactly it.
a lot of people like saying that they can go mono into old school format. And you can at some level, in my opinion, and that would be actually the cheapest version available.
Yep.
And I don't think you could be competitive mono unless you go blue.
Well, actually, there's been some interesting results along those terms. There have been some pretty large old school tournaments where a black deck or a red burn deck have top 8'd with a lot of people
Really?
involved. Yeah.
The top 8?
Yes.
Were they playing against only 8 people?
No, it's just it's crazy. There are some. I mean, they weren't all just cheap cards, but they were monocolor. I have definitely seen mono red and mono black top 8. Although, but what
Mono red I can understand. I don't understand black. I mean, I obviously they have Howl from Beyond.
it is generally
But-
harder though. He's making a really good point. If you can at least splash in one other color, you open it up an awful lot.
Exactly. Dual colors is like the best, and if you can get tricolors going.
Yep.
Yeah.
So I actually had an entire series on my original channel, Edwin the Magic Engineer, where there's a series of videos where I was covering budget old school decks. And the first 5 that I did were one of each color on monocolor decks.
Oh my God! What did you do for white?
I'll have to show you. In fact, it'll be in the list that's going to be linked when this video gets posted. But I think
first off, you put out a bunch of Surreactors.
I think it was Weenie Creatures that also
Oh.
had Armageddon and Wrath of God in balance.
Okay.
Because, you can definitely put up a really good fight. Like, if you drop fast creatures in Geddon,
Oh yeah.
I mean, that can translate to a game win pretty darn well, actually. So, anyways, there are some good monocolor decks that even if you're not going to necessarily win the tournament, you're competitive when you come in with these monocolor decks. So those exist. But then the next thing I was transitioning to on my channel was I was going to mid-range decks, and like you just suggested, you're exactly right. The first thing I suggested that you guys should buy is dual lands and Says of Brass, so that when you start splashing another color in, it opens up that variety massively.
Now, City of Brass, go get Chronicles. It's cheap, I think. So.
Yep.
Okay.
Probably still like $5 to $10 a piece,
Yeah.
something like that.
So Chronicles, that's right there. That's the first pickup.
The White Border Chronicles. Don't go for the Arabian Nights City of Brass, which is 400 or something.
Yeah, it's ridiculous.
Or there's also a foreign black border from the Foreign Chronicles. I forget what that set was called. Tavis would probably tell us.
Yeah.
But there is there's a foreign black border City of Brass with the original art, and those are actually getting spendy now too,
Yeah.
50 to 100.
And then
or
you can
something.
actually do the strip mines in Chronicles as well. That's another cheap card that you can get. That's usually useful. Gets out that Library of Alexandria. That's the
4th
freaking
edition
thing.
also had those.
Oh, they do?
Yeah, I think.
Okay.
Oh, nice. In the comments, they'll tell us how stupid we are. But the point is, there are cheaper versions of those cards that you can definitely pick up for those actual budget decks.
Yep.
The dual lands you're going to have to pay some money for.
That's a little harder to do.
Unfortunately, even though Collector's Edition and International Collector's Edition, are legal in old school, even the prices of those dual lands are actually about what revised dual lands are at.
Actually, yeah, they're getting pretty close. And so,
Yeah.
it's the price is going up.
So, but anyways, the big point though is if you're a new player and you're coming into the old school format, you might first want to target a monocolored deck and then start looking at splashing another color in. But when you splash it, what you're generally going to want to do is, I would recommend, don't go half and half those colors. Go light on your second color. So like you kind of plan on, like, if it's going to be like a white aggressive deck with a little bit of blue, but the majority of your lands are plains, right? So you can get those white knights and those Order of Light Birds out, because you need that double white for a lot of those. It's really critical. And so then you'll have, like, maybe out of 24 mana sources, maybe you'll have like 10 of them can access blue. So you could get, like, eventually your 4 tundras, maybe 3 cities of brass, and then the rest are just islands, right?
Yeah.
So you're much more likely to get the white when you actually need it.
Exactly. So that's actually a good idea. And I always say one of your colors should always be blue.
There you go. Always pick blue.
Yeah, I don't care which color you go for as your secondary / primary, but one of the colors has to be blue.
Mm-hmm. Mm-hmm.
I've never seen a very successful anything without blue. Well, there was one white-black one that went around for a while, but that got destroyed by blue later on.
Mm-hmm. So yeah, budget decks are definitely a good way to enter Old School. And I like this topic because Old School is one of those formats where you really honestly can be pretty competitive with a deck that doesn't have just the most expensive cards.
That is true.
Now, necessarily winning, like if there's like a 200-300 person tournament, making top 8 starts to get pretty thin. It's harder to get into that level, that tier of performance with a monocolored deck. Now, it can happen. It's a lot harder though. But if you were going to sit down with like 20 friends or something like that, or a very small tournament,
that's fine.
It's absolutely possible to win that kind of tournament with a monocolored deck. Even like green with just berserks and giant growths and land worlds and stuff.
Because a lot of people play white and put the COP of every color in there, so they at least have an action to get that COP in the second game. Mm-hmm. That's the problem with going with mono. You're easily locked down.
Yep. Now, coming in, if you're a new player versus an experienced player, that's kind of a different angle also. If you're a new player, you're probably going to be really intimidated when you look at the prices of all these old school cards.
Oh, yeah. That's a huge climb there.
Yeah. It can be kind of insane.
Yes.
Now, the nice thing about that, though, is if you're coming into Old School and you're new to Magic, you're hopefully just going to eventually have to see that these cards, these originals, actually hold their value. It might, in some sense, be harder in that respect for players that have come from other formats. Because I could see a lot of standard players coming in and just expecting, like, okay, well, I buy this card and eventually it's going to go down in value. And that's like the weird thing to get used to in Old School. The cards don't really go down in value. They tend to go up. So, like, you know, if you were like a standard player and you're used to buying all these cards and seeing their value drop after a set rotates out, like all of a sudden you come into Old School and you buy, you know, your Beta Disenchants and you get your, you know, your revised, like, of all your basic playables, but then you start upgrading pieces here and there. And next thing you know, that value starts going up.
Yeah, after a year goes by, usually it goes up. That's the thing.
Yep. And what I also like about Old School for people starting out is, like, say you buy into the format, you build a deck, you play it for a while, you get some exposure to it, and then just life gets busy. Then you put the deck in a closet and you're gone for 2 years, right? If you come back 2 years later, not only is that deck still a good deck, if it was good then, it's good later. Not only that, but those cards all have value still. So if you come back into it and you just think, you know what, I've played so much of green-blue, I'm done with it, I want to go black-red for a while, you can swap those cards for a black-red deck.
Yeah, we've actually done that. We actually have that video on our Unhinged Magi. We talked about it there too.
Yep. Yeah, so that's a really awesome thing about the format. So yeah, so budget decks, if you guys are interested in starting Old School Magic format, we definitely recommend giving it a shot. It makes some difference if you're coming in completely fresh versus from another format, but you can do it from either direction.
Well, if you're coming in from if you've never played Magic before and you have a friend who can loan you some cards, I would recommend going with the red color because it's easier to understand. There's not much manipulation. It's usually just, I destroy this, I deal damage to that.
That's true.
I usually have a trampler coming across the screen or something like that.
Yeah, red burn slide decks are just fantastic.
So that's what I would recommend. I usually start people off with red burn anyways. because that gives them some excitement as well.
Yep.
And they usually finish really big, you know, boom, fireball, I win, yay! You know,
yeah, if a new player just comes in and all they do is throw lightning bolts and chain lightnings at your face, you know, like they'll win some games like that.
They will, because it's speed.
Yeah, it's so good and it's so aggressive. Now, a more skilled red player might come in and like hold back that one lightning bolt, waiting for that ball lightning to come out so they can zod it off the table or something like that. You know, be a bit more strategic about how they do it. But you can definitely just sit down with a red deck and throw all the cards at the other guy's face and win games.
Yeah. Okay, I put my goblin down. I sacrifice my golden hit into face for 5.
Yep. Yeah. So you like red to start out for new people.
For new people, because it's so intuitive. It's so easy.
Yep.
Where blue is, should I counterspell it? I don't really know what's coming up. And if you're a new player, you're not going to know what's coming up.
Yep.
With white, it's kind of like, it's white. So I don't really like white.
Yeah.
I mean, there's a couple cards in there that I like, but...
But white has access to an awful lot of tools. That's what I like about it.
It has tools, but does the player know how to do it? You put out a soul ring.
Right.
I disenchant it right away. Then they put out black vice. Where's my disenchant? Oh,
yeah, your skill level is going to have to be a bit higher to do well right off the bat with the white deck. You've got your disenchants, Swords to Plowshares, Balance, Wrath of God, Armageddon, and then a lot of very good efficient creatures.
Correct.
You got a lot of good tools there. And your sideboard can be packed full of like Dust to Dust, Circle of Protections, all kinds of like really good color hoser type cards. So you got the tools there, but you're gonna have to have a bit more skill to play that white deck a little bit.
Yeah,
better.
green is also the same thing. It's kind of like I've got big giant creatures with big giant mana, but I need to use my tranquilities and I need to use my hurricanes, even if I can't, you know, tie the game.
Yep.
You know, I'm going to draw it to a draw.
Which also, you know, tranquility is a really underplayed card in old school. There's an awful lot of times I've seen decks lean so heavy into enchantments because they figured the other guy's going to either have Chaos Orb or Disenchant, like that's like it for removing enchantments. And then like you pop out with Tranquility and you wipe like 4 or 5 cards off the board. And they're like, oh my gosh, there's so much card advantage there.
Tranquility is good depending on the deck.
Yeah, I think it's underplayed.
Yeah, totally. And then let's see, black is really kind of complicated as well because, you know, I mean, you can play you kind of can play a burn deck with black with the drain lives and that kind of stuff and terror. However, what happens to the person who's playing and the other person's playing black and you're like holding a terror and you're like, uh-oh.
Or an artifact. Yeah.
I don't know what to do. It's a card that doesn't work.
Yeah. There's an interesting question there also with the discard. If you have like a Hymn to Turek or a Mind Twist, if you hymn someone right off the bat, you might hit a couple cards that they care about. But sometimes it's actually kind of nice letting them drop their small creatures, their fast mana, and then they're sitting there holding their bigger cards that are much more threatening in their hand after turn 3 or 4, and you hymn those out. Sometimes that's much more impactful.
Or if you're playing with Edwin, that doesn't work, because I did that one time, and then he dropped almost his entire can and put a Jazam and crap on the board. I'm like, well,
sorry.
I missed my opportunity.
Sorry about that.
That's terrible.
There's trauma over it.
It is.
It's my fault.
I tried to be strategic. It did not work.
So I hope that's helpful to any of your, if you guys that are just starting off, if you guys are watching this video and you're experienced players, you're probably very bored and I'm sorry.
Actually, they're not. They're like, man, they're talking about old school. I'm just going to eat this up.
Maybe.
Where's my Doritos?
Maybe. So thanks a lot for tuning in, guys, and I hope you have a great day and send this video to a friend.
Yes, that doesn't play and make them play.
And for anyone who hasn't found our other videos, please notice the join button below. We actually are accepting members to the channel now.
That's correct.
It's a grade above, just people showing up and watching or subscribing. You can actually become a member and get special benefits from those.
That's right. All right, so hit the like button, subscribe, make a comment, ring the bell, maybe think about becoming a member, and then we'll see you on the next video.
Okay, bye everybody.
Bye.